Napoleon Bonaparte is a legendary name. Most people know him as a brilliant but disgraced general who once ruled France. But fewer know about his strange posthumous career as a sideshow attraction. Ever heard of a dried, shriveled thing preserved in a glass case traveling around Europe, changing hands like a strange relic, occasionally put on display for people to pay money to see? You probably know it as Napoleon's penis. Okay, it sounds silly, but hear me out. If you want to understand Napoleon's weird legacy, you have to confront this particular joke that history played on him. Not a great lover, short guy with a big personality, imperial ambitions, endless neuroses, it's easy to mock him. But like most jokes, there's more to it than meets the eye. So strap in, this is going to be a ride. Let's start at the beginning. Like I said, Napoleon died on May 5th, 1821. He was 51 years old, exiled on the remote island of Saint Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean, basically Britain's personal prison for him. For over 5 years, Napoleon had been stuck here after his defeat at Waterloo. He spent his time walking the coast, dictating his memoirs and endlessly complaining about how the British were mistreating him. But as the spring turned into summer, he started getting sick. His stomach was always hurting. He had ulcers. One day he threw up blood. The consensus now is that Napoleon had stomach cancer, but back then no one knew that. And that allowed rumors to spread that the British were poisoning him slowly, killing him with arsenic. The problem was that those rumors had some truth to them. Napoleon had taken mercury treatments for syphilis earlier in his life, and that made his teeth fall out and left him with other health problems. There's also some evidence that he got mercury poisoning from the wallpaper in his exile house. Regardless, those health issues caused him to lose weight quickly, to become frail and weak. On May, Napoleon had a last supper of lobster soup, venison, macaroni, and wine. He ate outside in the fresh air, apparently feeling stronger than he had in months. Then he went back inside to his bedroom, lay down, and never woke up. Napoleon was dead. At first, the British authorities claimed he died from natural causes, likely stomach cancer. But the French didn't believe that. They demanded that doctors perform an autopsy to find out if he'd been poisoned. So they sent over to physicians, Francesco Antomarchi and Dr. Constant. They arrived at Saint Helena in September, 6 months after Napoleon died. The British allowed them to exhume his body and examine it, but only under close watch. And that's when things got weird. Dr. Constant reported that he examined Napoleon's body and found nothing unusual, no signs of poisoning, but Antomarchi disagreed. He believed Napoleon was poisoned and argued that Constant hadn't done a thorough enough job. What happened next depends on which account you read. The French version says that Antomarchi asked permission to keep Napoleon's remains overnight for further study. But the British refused. He needed to be buried. So to prevent the body from spoiling before burial, Antomarchi sliced open the abdominal cavity, removed Napoleon's intestines, and set them aside to be buried later. The British version claims Antomarchi did this without permission, desecrating the emperor's body. Either way, the upshot is the same. Antomarchi saw something in Napoleon's internal organs that convinced him the man was poisoned. But he couldn't prove it. He was forced to rebury the emperor, along with his removed guts. And soon after, he left Saint Helena on a ship bound for France. Now, it's important to note here that these stories are based on second-hand accounts from people who were unactually present. The original reports from the autopsy were lost at sea, so we don't know for sure what happened. But that doesn't stop the legend of this story from having one very rude chapter, a secret that stayed hidden until decades later. Supposedly, while everyone was focused on the autopsy, examining Napoleon's insides, the Corsican valet, someone who'd served the emperor for years, snuck into the room and cut off Napoleon's penis. Why? Honestly, who knows? There are 3 popular theories. One is that it was a political trophy, a way to mock the corpse of Napoleon, the great conqueror who was reduced to a humiliating keepsake. Another claims it was just a weird, morbid souvenir like a piece of Berlin Wall that Americans brought back. A third says it was meant to spite the British by keeping a piece of Napoleon's manhood away from their grasp. Whatever the reason, the story goes that the valet hid the penis on his person and eventually made his way back to Corsica with it, Napoleon's home island, where it stayed hidden for generations, passing through various Corsican families. Why does that matter? Because if you want to take the story at face value, The amputated penis is one of the cruelest jokes history ever played on Napoleon. Here was a man who lived for centuries as one of the most powerful, infamous men in the world, a warrior, an emperor. He was feared, respected, revered, and then in death he ended up the butt of a joke. To be fair, Napoleon's reputation has definitely suffered from this story. Countless articles and even books have been written about it. It's influenced popular culture, jokes, artwork. The internet loves this kind of stuff. It's become this running gag that Napoleon had a tiny penis. Despite the fact that he was 5 feet 6 inches tall, in the era when average height was closer to 5 feet, at 2 inches. That would put him around the modern equivalent of 6 feet. But hey, no one remembers his actual accomplishments. They just remember the rude legend. Not to mention, if this story is true, it means that in death, Napoleon wasn't even allowed to rest in peace. His final indignity, to be hacked apart and mocked. It's hard to think of anything crueler. The penis's journey around Europe. Now, as you can imagine, we have no idea what happened to Napoleon's penis until much, much later, according to the legend. It remained on Corsica for generations, passed down through families, never to be shown to anyone. The story goes that it stayed hidden until the 19th century, when suddenly it began changing hands. In 1896, an Italian aristocrat named Count Cesare Gavazzi showed off Napoleon's penis at a party. Partygoers paid admission by bringing a bottle of wine, and then they got to see the mummified organ, supposedly. From there it changed hands to a professor at the University of Florence, then to an antiquarian in Milan, even briefly to Mussolini. Eventually it wound up in London in the 1920s, purchased by an American bookseller. In 1924, he brought it to New York City and displayed it in his shop. To be clear, no one could confirm the penis was Napoleon's. It was just a story that came with the package. But regardless, people paid money to come see it, and newspapers happily reported on the shriveled organ that had supposedly belonged to the great Napoleon. In 1930, urologists even examined the penis and published a report claiming that it was 1.5 inches long, about the size of a large cigar. No surprise there. But the report also noted that it was of poor quality, inconsistent with the genitals of a 50-ish man. If this is Napoleon's penis, he was either born with a micropenis or he had syphilis. And again, both stories only feed into the humiliating jokes at his expense. The penis crossed the Atlantic again during World War II, ending up in the hands of Nazi Germany. How exactly it happened is a mystery, but so is everything else about Napoleon's penis. Finally, it turned up in 1977 in the possession of a urologist from New Jersey, Dr. John Latimer, according to reports. He displayed it in a glass case in his home, alongside the chairs Lincoln and Kennedy were assassinated in, Hitler's personal effects, and other macabre relics. He was a collector of history's darkest moments. So naturally, he kept Napoleon's penis on display. Now, sadly, we don't know what happened to the penis after Dr. Latimer died in 2002. Maybe, still sitting in some display case. Maybe it was lost when his estate was sold. Who knows? All we know for sure is that, somewhere out there, hidden away from the public eye, there's a shriveled little thing that may or may not have belonged to Napoleon Bonaparte. And that's the cruel joke. It's the legend that follows him even in death. A constant reminder that greatness is often undeserved and no one is safe from history's sick sense of humor. So what do you think? Do you believe Napoleon's penis was cut off and smuggled away? Or is this just another tall tale spun about the man? Tell me your thoughts below, and remember to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.